Hey, this is Ted at Fireboard Labs. So I want to show you guys one of our machines which is part of our surface mount assembly. This is called a stencil printer. And what's really fascinating about this machine, it's almost like an old school type of technology, right? I've got friends that have a t-shirt screening business. It's the same process. So as part of this, we thought a series of kind of showing you guys behind the scenes and like digging into these machines and maybe even explaining a little bit about how they work would be kind of fun. I don't know if you can see the angle in here, but you can kind of see the stencil that's in place. And it's this aluminum framed rectangular piece. And I think we can unclamp it. And so this stencil comes in and out of the machine. And we have a lot of these stencils on hand. So you can see, for instance, this one is set up for, there's one side of the board here and the other side of the board is over on this side of the stencil. So the process is very simple. Essentially you have these squeegees, just like you would squeegee on any other type of screen print, but here you have a metal squeegee. The machine essentially comes down like this, and what you would have is you would have solder paste, which is, the consistency is very much like toothpaste. And so you have a bead of solder paste that goes all the way across the stencil. And the squeegee comes down and it essentially just rolls that bead across. And then what happens is, these are called apertures, but these holes inside of the stencil, you just have paste that comes in and fills every single one of those holes. So on a typical printed circuit board, you have quite a few different pads, and here's an example. This is actually the board that would go essentially match up against. So this board comes up underneath and the machine pushes this board up underneath, and then the stencil comes down, or I'm sorry, the squeegee comes down like this across the stencil, and it just goes like this. It just wipes across. And so then the board comes out of the machine, and then where you see this gold type of finish, these would all be coated in solder paste. And solder paste is actually, as I mentioned, it's like a consistency of toothpaste, but it's just paste. So you can kind of tell here is a little jar of paste, and there's just itty bitty little balls of solder. They're almost microscopic. And then there's flux. So the flux helps, as it heats up, the flux kind of helps that solder flow evenly. And then what happens is these components get placed onto each one of these pads. Again, it's surface mount technology is what they call it, SMT. So a surface mount, these components just go right down on top of the pad on the surface, sticks to the paste, and then it flows through the oven, runs through the oven where the solder then reflows, becomes liquid instead of the paste. And then you end up with that really shiny, silvery surface, really finished surface that you're used to when you see parts that are soldered onto a circuit board. Now, this particular machine we purchased in 2019 from Juki. Juki is well known in the old days for sewing machines. Really cool Japanese company. That's the pick and place machine. So Juki makes really great pick and place machines. This one's made in Japan. Juki white labels this machine, which is actually made by a company called, I think, G-Titan, or at least that's kind of the name of the company. It's a Chinese vendor, so they kind of call it G-Titan. It's white labeled by Juki, so they have a really good experience with, I think, supporting these machines, installing these machines in line with their pick and place machines. And we've been happy with it. We love this machine. So it's a G-Titan stencil printer, and we had this in 2019, and here it is 2024, and it's been running lights out. You know, so you literally, it's just, you feed it in line, and the board just draws in, and you can see it kind of feeding right in. So yeah, and I don't have paste installed right now, as we were just kind of playing with this just to kind of show you guys a little bit more about the machine. But you can tell it pulled it in, and essentially it holds the board in place, and this entire table comes up and down. And I can show you a little bit of kind of how that happens. The camera will come up, and then this table print height, essentially the whole table underneath will lift the board, and the board comes up. So the whole table comes up, and then the whole table also can shift sort of on an XY swivel in essentially, so it'll align the board perfectly up against that stencil. So again, that's sort of the first part of an SMT line. It's a critical phase because that paste has to be applied almost perfectly on that board. If you're missing paste, you have too much paste, you know, the whole process is not going to work. So this is a very process important part of the step, is to make sure the paste is applied really, really perfectly across every board. So fun stuff. Yeah, happy to show you guys. It's fun to dig into this stuff behind the scenes. So stay tuned. We're going to walk you guys through other machines as we go. Stay tuned here, and we'll keep showing you guys how we do stuff. But this is our headquarters here in Kansas City, so it's always fun to show you around.